I'd like to start today with some questions that came up on YouTube and some potential solutions. Some people have difficulty visualizing the complex visualizations of the Avatamsaka Sutra. And there's a number of things that could be going on, but the most likely one is just inexperience. It takes a while. It takes practice. It takes some dedicated effort, some discipline, some energy, some patience. But in the meanwhile, there's a book called How to Meditate by Kathleen MacDonald. And that's a little bit different. It's a lot more focused meditations. It's tantric. It's Buddhist tantrayana, like the Tibetan tantrayana is, and so it's an advanced tantric meditation techniques and how to do it. And so that's something that people might try. I don't have a copy of that book. Do you have a copy by any chance? How to Meditate, Kathleen MacDonald? Okay. I don't think I have a copy right here. But it's a classic and it's very good. And it might help people with introductory visualization meditations, tantric meditations. Now, going back to the YN, or the Avatamsaka, the idea is not that you visualize everything each time. What happens is, as you read the book, it has a kind of mesmerizing effect. And these images soak into you. And the way it's worded and the reason it's so long is precisely that reason. By chanting it, by reciting it, even by hearing it, these images start to infuse your consciousness. And then they get into your blood and your bones. And then you realize that you're able to think in new ways that you couldn't think before. And you're able to see far more dimensions than you could see before. And you could see from different directions. And it's it's not for the lazy. It's not for it's actually, I take that back. It's for people who don't want to sit down and do these kinds of meditations on their own, which is much, much, much more difficult, in my opinion. But different things are difficult for different people. Nevertheless, sooner or later, this work comes down to work, and it comes down to what are the 6 paramitas? The basic Buddhist virtues that are necessary to do anything.
Okay, I think it's discipline.
Discipline, good. What else?
Wisdom.
Insight. Good. Insight, which you get from study and listening to lectures, etc. Okay. Next.
Energy.
Energy. You've got to have energy to do this work. So you've got to keep your body in good shape.
And concentration.
Meditation.
Like in one direction.
Meditation, concentration, good. Or sutra, good. So that's 4.
Generosity.
Generosity with yourself. Patience and generosity with yourself, generosity with others. We're not talking about giving away the farm here. We're talking about generosity of spirit. Pretty much. Although you need to be generous with whatever. You're caring for folks or whatever. Generosity. It's a great attribute. Next.
I think finally it's patience.
And patience, the king of them all. Patience is so important. I once spent almost a week in a teaching session with the Dalai Lama, and it was entirely focused on Shantideva's patience. Shantideva, a guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, and we focused just on the chapter on patience. Okay, so these 6 virtues or characteristics are essential for progress in the Dharma. And in life, they're very good ones for life as well. There's patience, the king of them all, generosity, concentration or meditation. They become kind of the same thing, ultimately. Energy, your body has to be healthy in order for you to do this work. Insight or wisdom, you've got to have that in order to cultivate some of the other things. And then, of course, discipline. So these 6 paramitas interact with each other. And if you cultivate one, it makes the other stronger. If you cultivate 3, it makes the other 3 stronger. So with energy, you can have more discipline. With insight, you will have more discipline because you understand what the goals are. With generosity, you have more patience. With patience, you have more insight, and so on and so forth. So those are the 6 basics that, in case people didn't get them early on, those are the kind of like the requirements. Now, as you cultivate these, they start to cultivate themselves. All right. So, and these have been handed down from 2,000 years ago, at least, more than that. And it's what the Buddha taught. Now, for people who don't have a background in Buddhism, and a background in Buddhism is not necessary, although it's very, very, very useful, I can recommend any number of the books written by the Dalai Lama, usually in concert with somebody else. But, things on how to live a good life, or The Art of Happiness. There's a book that he wrote with a psychiatrist in Arizona. There's others as well. He's written many, many books. Or, if you prefer Tantra, there's a book called Gates to Buddhist Practice by an old teacher of mine, Chagdud Tulku, as we used to call him. So these are ways to work alongside the Avatamsaka, or to prepare for the Avatamsaka, the flower ornament scripture. But the best thing to do is just set aside some time, even if it's 20 minutes, even if it's 10 minutes a day, get through it, and gradually it'll get easier and you'll understand more, and it pretty soon will become second nature. And then before you know it, your mind is much, much, much more expansive, much, much, much more capable. That's the amazing thing. And you're able to look at the world with a far broader scope than you could before. And you have an untold advantage in your own life for getting towards peace and happiness. Okay? Thank you for letting me put in that little blurb. And if people have questions, the best place to get me is on X. YouTube comments are okay, but X is much better. The DMs on X, or publicly if it looks like a question that other people could benefit from. All right, sir? Thank you.
Yes.
What have you learned?
What have I learned? I was noticing few things about myself, and I noticed earlier I used to avoid things. I've been relying on food and entertainments to avoid things, especially the present. But what I've noticed was those are gross things, I would say. There are way too subtle things, and one of them being resorting to thoughts. Like if something bad happens, then I just resort to thoughts. It's like thought saying, yeah, it's most likely not a heart attack, it's just a heartburn. Or when I'm not doing as good as others, it's few excuses and all. So I just realized how reliant I am on my thoughts when bad things happen.
And so your thoughts tend towards the negative, and they tend towards the somatic, like something's wrong with my body. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. You want to get rid of those?
And not only just that, those are negative thoughts, but when I notice these feelings, then other sets of positive thoughts or thoughts that counter this comes up.
Oh, good.
That's what I meant when I am relying on them. But it won't work, because there will be some things, like being worried about death, that no amount of thinking can alleviate it at all. And I think it as much as I can. I can't. I don't know in those cases, but yeah.
So there's two big subjects here. One is thoughts that are unpleasant, uncomfortable,
Yeah.
painful, and the other one is fear of death.
Yeah, fear of death in the sense that any amount of, how should I say, comforting thoughts can't stop my fear of death, because
Correct. And
technically I
comforting
can die any moment.
comforting thoughts are not the antidote to really anything. Okay. So it probably makes sense from someone who's trying to help you with these things for me to ask you: are these thoughts that you have, or are these thoughts that happen to you? Do you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to generate some scary thoughts about my body, that I'm having a heart attack or that I'm going to die or whatever? Do you sit down and generate those for yourself?
No, these thoughts happen to me because
They happen
if I
to you,
could
right?
choose them, I would.
They happen
Yeah.
to you. Okay. That's an important distinction. So then the next step would be to find out who is the you that they happen to. First of all, you don't need to own these thoughts necessarily. But let me
So what
explain
do you mean
why.
by that?
Well, who's going to own them?
It's it doesn't make sense to own them, I would say. I would say it's more about what these thoughts imply, especially to myself.
Okay, so let's talk about yourself. That's what we're trying to get to. Who is this self that we keep talking about that causes you so much suffering? That experiences these thoughts that make you fearful or anxious. Let's find out about this self.
It's the self that is aware of my senses right now. The one who is hearing to you speaking and seeing everything here, and thoughts forming up and being able or be aware of those thoughts.
So you've told me what you think it does, but you haven't told me what it is.
What do you mean by what it is? Because I can't discuss
Well,
that
is it
with you
your
at
liver?
all.
Is it your liver that's doing this?
No,
Is it
we
your
can't keep going there.
is it your ears?
No,
Okay. Is it your legs or your arms? Your neck?
no, it could
Is
at
it
max or at minimum be brain or spinal cord.
okay? Well, what evidence do you have that your self exists in your brain?
Yeah.
That sounds like a story that you've made up to explain something that you can't explain otherwise.
Okay. So about that, how do I know that I can't explain otherwise? Because that I believe there is some belief that I am assuming to be true, and I haven't checked it yet.
Well, I agree.
But that,
You're living on a belief, and what I would recommend, and what all of this is about, is to get insight, to get understanding, because right now you're just assuming this belief is true, that there's a little you that exists inside here somewhere, and this is where your consciousness comes from, either your frontal cortex or your midbrain or your pons, or I don't know where you think it comes from. Is there a place in here where you think it comes from?
no, I don't know.
Well, I can
I
tell you
can't.
there's not. We don't have a place like that, right?
Again,
I mean, I
yeah,
studied
but you can
neurobiology
tell, but
all my life, right? And we've been looking for the self in here. We
yeah.
couldn't find it. On the other hand, when we study other materials, we do find the origin of the self. And the origin of the self is a narrative, or a belief, or an idea, or a thought complex. That's all it is. Because you could just as easily identify with something else rather than just your body.
But why and how?
Well, those are two different questions. Ask the question again. Here we go.
Uh, why will why will someone believe that they are their hand? And
Well, you seem to be telling me you believe you're your head, And I think it's because your eyes are in your head and your ears are on the other side and your mouth happens to be here, so you think that you're in your head. That's the most common
Yes.
belief, right? But see, that's just a belief. That's just one identification out of millions of others.
But how can you disprove that? From my perspective, these things are true.
It doesn't make sense for me to disprove it. It makes sense for you to prove it or disprove it. I know I can identify with my body, and I will suffer thereby. I know that my body, but I also know that I'm not my body, that my body was born and will die, but I'm not my body. But I know that from experience. And the nature of this work is to get you to that understanding too, because there is what Jesus called the peace that passeth understanding. Or there's what the Buddhists call Buddha nature, or what other people would call subjective awareness, or other people would call universal consciousness, or other people would call true intelligence, or awareness, and understanding what's up and what's not up. The path beyond
That's the
suffering.
problem.
Go ahead.
Like you are saying these things, like I get it, like maybe you are true, but I still can't. It's from my perspective, it's still a belief what you are saying,
Correct,
and I
because you
can't
don't have
just assume
sufficient
that.
you don't have sufficient insight. You haven't been able to shake your former belief because you don't have anything to replace it with.
Nothing to replace it with.
Well, let's say that let's put a headset on you, right? Let's put a really good headset on you. And we're going to leave it on you for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, and we're going to put you to sleep, and then you're going to wake up. But in your 3D headset, which has sound and everything else, we've actually hooked you up to somebody else, and you're looking through their eyes in, I don't know, Italy. And they're walking around Italy.
Okay.
Where are you? Where would you think you were? Where would you think you were?
If I am fully immersed in that world, then I'll believe that I'm in Italy. But
Correct. And that's an easy thought experiment for you to do because you know how that works, right? Or in theory.
yeah,
But I think what you mean to say is that your consciousness is in Italy. Your awareness appears to be localized in Italy now. And it has nothing to do
yes,
with your body. I mean, not nothing to do, but it's not where your consciousness does not reside in your body. And that's a hard thing for people to unlearn because in the Western world, we've been so materialistic for the last 300 years. We imagine that everything must have a physical basis, but that's simply false. Could you raise your head up just a little bit? There we go.
yep. How about now? Yeah,
So we've lived in this materialist paradigm for 300 years, and now the whole thing's fallen apart. Our theories won't unify; they don't work. And we used to have molecules and atoms and protons and subatomic particles, quarks and gluons and things like that. But now, even those don't work, and we've got quantum fields. What is a quantum field? Well, they say
I
it's a
don't
field
know.
of potentiality, and I say, okay, well, we're getting closer, because consciousness is a field of potentiality, and you can fill that field with thought, or with visual stimuli, or with fear. That's it loves fear because it takes the whole thing over. It's like a wildfire. But those thoughts occur to you. I don't think you sit there and generate them on purpose. Do you?
No, of
You
course
you
not. Why
learn
would I
them.
choose
You
to?
learn them.
I learned them because I believe in preparing for the worst.
But see, that's not preparing for the worst. And that's not the worst. So let's imagine you're a dog, okay? Or a monkey. Do monkeys, when they get a little twinge in their chest, or dogs, when they get a twinge here, do they say, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack, I'm going to die?
No,
Why not?
because they don't have things like thoughts, or they may have it, but it's way too
They don't have
primitive.
elaborate thoughts with abstract objects. Now, if you knew what thought was, and if you knew where thought came from, any one of those would liberate you. If you knew what you were, that would liberate you. If you knew what universal consciousness was, or just consciousness or awareness, that would liberate you. But until you learn this, you can't know it. That's the problem. And that's the mystery of this world. Or at least for humans, it's the mystery of this world. I don't think trees and animals have the same problem at all. And there are direct cousins, there are brothers and sisters, but they don't have this problem. This problem comes from the human mind, which is a wonderful thing, but not if it's working against you.
But the thing is, how has it helped them at all? Most of them are
With
like
engineering,
trees are
it's
being
helped
cut
us.
down.
With engineering, it's helped us a lot. Are you talking to us or the trees?
I'm talking about the trees or the
You know how long
animals.
some trees live?
Few hundreds of years.
Yeah, a lot longer than we do.
But they are being cut down these days. There is a lot of deforestation going on, and how having no thoughts help them.
How is that going to hurt them in any way?
By having no thoughts, they will die early.
Okay,
Like if
well,
they could have
let's
done,
go
they
back to
could have done
humans.
something.
You believe you're going to die because
I
you've
believe
identified with
that
something. You've
thoughts have.
identified. Okay, so that if the tree, now you'd also know that trees now, we know that they communicate with each other. And you can almost think of the forest as one organism of trees, let's say, for now.
Yeah.
Now, if a tree identifies with the forest, truly identifies with the forest, of what concern is it that one tree or another gets cut down? You ought to also believe that death is the worst thing that can happen to you, and it's not.
Are the worst things as well, but
Yeah, but see, this problem comes from a delusional thinking on your part. You think the world is material. You think the world is made up of form and name and substance. And so you give a name to yourself because you seem to be loculated in this body. You give a name to yourself. Well, I am this body. I have form and I have a name. And the reality is there's neither one in reality.
So regarding that, I think few weeks ago we were discussing the same thing, right? That there is no substance to things because at the end of the day, it's combination of our senses. Like I
At the
feel
end of the
some
day,
things
it's a
are.
dream. It's like a dream. There's nothing there. But that's advanced. You prove to me that something here exists. Prove to me anything exists. I mean, you won't be alone. Philosophers have been doing this since the beginning of time. So have scientists trying to prove that what exists. And they've not been able to get to the ontology. Right? Do you remember what ontology is? What is ontology?
I think it's the science of the metaphysics
Of being,
of this.
of existence,
Yeah, of this.
of what things are actually made of. Now, what progress have we made in ontology in the last 3,000 years?
I haven't gone deep
Ask
into
the
it.
AI,
Though,
what's
but
the best
it's.
understanding of ontology in 2024?
I guess it would be quantum physics.
Don't
Would
guess. Ask. These days with the AIs, it's so easy. There's no excuse. I ask the AI questions all day, every day about all kinds of things. I was asking it whether Herman Melville was sure that whales were mammals instead of fish, because when you read his book, Moby Dick, it sounds like he talks about fish, but he just does that for dramatic effect. So the AIs, they know stuff, and you should too. So what does it say? The best ontology in 2024.
There are few ontologies, I would say. One
Let's
of them
hear 'em.
being
Let's hear 'em.
quantum ontology.
Define quantum ontology to me.
Ongoing discussions about the ontological implications of quantum mechanics and how to represent quantum concepts in formal ontologies. No.
No is right. Okay.
think-
What else?
Probabilistic ontologies.
Probabilistics, like
Incorporation
we
of-
probably exist. There's a
I don't
probable
know,
chance that we'll find a
probability.
location of a particle. We cannot say where the particle will be, the subatomic particle or the particle, but we could say it could be here probably, might be here probably. And we could use that in engineering, but that doesn't help us with ontology. Probability is not existence. Or as Einstein said, God does not play dice with the universe. Okay, so let's not get into the
Yeah.
science too much, but you owe it to yourself. You're a young, smart man, educated. You need to be asking yourself and the AIs these questions every time they come up. But let's get back to Dharma. You seem to believe in an inherent self that exists as its own entity. Where did you get that idea?
Where did I
From
get
everybody
the
and
idea?
everything around you.
I would say throughout my experiences.
Throughout your interpretation of your experiences, were you born with that idea? No. On the contrary, when you were born, you were fused with the world. You were the world. You were your mother and the room and the temperature and all that. You didn't make a boundary. But then gradually you learned the boundary in order to get along in this particular dream world we live in, or dream-like world we live in. So now tell me, why do you persist in saying that you have an individual self? Name one thing in the universe, anything at all, that exists inherently and independently without being a part of other things or being made up of other things.
Without being made up of other things.
Just anything.
I would say awareness then.
We'll see, but now you're that's not something that exists in the universe per se. The universe exists inside awareness, not the other way around. The universe,
Yeah,
I
so
can
that's
put
the
I can
thing.
put the universe right here in the palm of my hand quite easily. Yeah.
Because again, if awareness doesn't exist, then
conversely, I can visualize myself here in one of the creases of this palm, and the enormous universe around me. Huge, unspeakably large. How big is the universe anyway? No one knows. They're going to tell you 13 and a half light years, or they're going to tell you 34 light years across, or some crazy numbers they're inventing. We have no idea.
yeah.
So we live in a universe that has no borders that we know of, and no center. And we imagine that the earth is the center of it, and then we imagine we're the center of the earth. So you just need to lighten up and loosen up, and that's what the scriptures are for. This one in particular, I know I keep banging on it, but this one will teach you that. And help you with your science too, and help you with your engineering, help you just think better. But right now you're going on an assumption. What's the assumption?
Assumption that a separate I exists. That
Correct. And you
That is
can't
the
name
I.
one thing in the entire universe, nothing in the entire universe, historically or even in imagination, that exists on its own, that is not made up of other parts. That's called interdependent origination. That's a foundational understanding of reason. Not just Buddhism, but reason. Okay, so if you persist in delusional thinking, then yes, you will suffer. So free yourself, my friend.
I kind of understand what you mean. Like everything's related to other, yet
Not related, made up of.
made up. What do you mean by made up of? How is
Name an
rock made
object.
up of
Name an
me?
object.
Rock.
Okay, what is a rock made up of?
Elementary particles, if we come down to it.
Sand, maybe some quartz, maybe a little, I don't know, agate got mixed in there, and then those are made up of molecules, right? And then those molecules are made up of atoms, and then those atoms are made up of protons and electrons, and then you go to the protons and they're made up of subatomic particles, quarks and gluons and whatever they call them these days. And those just vanish when you look at them. They say, well, they're probably there. We could tell they seem to be there probabilistically, but when you look, they're not. Or that when you look, they are, but they aren't there any other time. Through through just the basic split lamp experiment. So either through Dharma or through science, you'll get to the same place. Nothing exists inherently. Everything originates interdependently. And you're trying to tell me that you're the exception to that rule. That's what you're trying to tell me. I alone exist independent of everything else in the universe. Is what you're saying.
So I would say I don't believe that as such. Like in fundamental level,
well, then why are you
I
worried
am
about dying?
dependent on others. Honestly, me being independent is more about approximation, I would argue. Approximating things.
Well, if you
so that it
approximate
can be
things, you're going to
useful in
suffer.
day-to-day life.
All right. Well, then approximate this: that you're not going to die, that you weren't born, that you are in fact universal consciousness having a human experience. You're not a human trying to have spiritual experiences. You are spirit or awareness or consciousness or whatever you want to call it. God having a human experience. Just flip it and start there, and then you can start making progress. But otherwise, if I'm speaking to a delusional person, I mean, there's a limit to what I can do until you let go of your delusions. No?
No, yeah, that's. I was thinking about infinite as well, but I am starting to realize I have some concept of infinite.
Yeah, you can't think about infinite.
That's. Yeah. I just have concepts about it, but to truly know it.
Concepts are the paving stones to hell, my friend. No, they're fun, but don't let them make you suffer. When did your consciousness arise? When were you first conscious, you think?
I can't tell about that. I can have memories when I was of age 6.
Was it when you were born?
No.
Was it before you were born?
No.
Oh, really? I can show you that babies can listen to music and recognize voices, and there's things they like and don't like when they're in the womb. Easily. That's why.
But I don't remember it.
I didn't ask what you could remember. I'm not asking what you can remember. You can remember almost nothing.
Yeah. Like deep sleep.
As a thinking man, when do you believe consciousness began for you?
Without memory, I can't discuss that at all. There is no proof as such to prove that.
Okay. So, first and foremost, you need to understand who this self is that you keep talking about, that suffers so much and is afraid it's going to die. Second, you need to figure out, where do these thoughts come from? Do you sit there and generate them on purpose, or are they something that happens to you? As in a manner of speaking.
It happens to me.
And then third, when you've answered those two, then we could talk about death.
Okay, so regarding thoughts, it happens to me. In fact, every
It
thought
happens to
happens
all
to me.
humans, it happens to virtually all humans. Join the club.
Uh, that's not the only thing though. Like, that also implies there is no free will as such.
No, it doesn't.
I don't have any.
Well, there's no self to
How?
have the free will at the level that you're speaking.
It's like a cog in the machine. It moves
No,
because
but
every
you
word
imagine you're a
surroundings it.
machine. I know differently. You imagine you're a machine, and this free will is something that you want to apply to that machine. Yeah, your body may be somewhat resemble a machine, but yourself is not the body. And whether an imaginary okay, does the Easter Bunny have free will? Is what you're asking me. Does the Easter Bunny have free will?
I don't know about Easter bunnies a lot.
Come on. Okay, does Santa Claus have free will?
I don't know. I don't think so.
He's imaginary.
Yeah, yeah,
How can an imaginary character have free will?
yeah. That's why it doesn't make sense. But
Correct, and that's what you're asking me.
like,
You're asking me with a straight face. Does my delusional self have free will?
but that's the thing. I haven't realized that it's
You
delusional.
know it already. You're pretending that you don't. I know that it's a fact because you are made of unbounded awareness. But you're pretending for maybe, I don't know how long in this lifetime you're going to pretend this. I don't know how long you want to suffer. But the thing is, you're
But
pretending
how? I
that
don't.
you're pretending that you exist independently, inherently, and separately. And none of those are true of the body.
I seriously don't know how am I pretending it. I
Well, you imagine you were born
don't.
and you imagine you're going to die. You imagine there's time, you imagine there's space, you imagine all this is like real in the sense that you were taught it when you were in third grade. You imagine that the physical world is actually physical. It is more important. This is more important part of it is you imagine that the physical world is more, the material world is more real than the actual world. You're lost in a VR simulation of sorts. No, I shouldn't use that example because it's not like that. It's much more than that. But you're basically lost in an imaginary world. Yeah, I'll do something else
What do you
stupid.
mean
Then
by?
I'll do something else stupid. Imagine you're playing a massive an online game, right? And you've got your character
Yeah.
and you're playing with other people all over the world. What is it, MMOW or something like that?
Yes, yes.
Does the character that you're
RPG.
playing have free will?
It depends on the character who is
No, it
playing
can't
that
have free
character.
will. That character is an imaginary character. It's made up of photons and light, just like you. Now, by the way, folks, I'm not saying this is a computer simulation. It's not. This world is much more marvelous than all of that. And also, it contains features that are not computatable. There's quite a few features that computation can't come close to touching. So, no, this is not a computer simulation. And nor will the computers become conscious unless we start hybridizing them with brain tissue or something foolish like that. Okay, keep going. So basically, you're telling me you can't decide whether or not that character in let's make it simpler. Let's just say Grand Theft Auto. The character in Grand Theft Auto,
Okay.
you're saying, well, he might have free will.
Like, in a sense that if I have free will and if I control that character, in a sense, eh, yeah, not in that sense, everything can have free will at the same time, not have free will.
All right, well, that's closer. So that's something. So that's a step, I suppose. The idea that something can be true and not true at the same time, depending on the level of abstraction. That's an important point. And again, this is what the Avatamsaka. I keep harping on it. Have you read any of it, by the way?
Yeah, a bit though, not
What
much.
page are you on?
Yeah, let me just check. Yeah, I think I'm on 235.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Why don't you read some slowly for the folks at home, the ones who don't. And by the way, if you're going to read this sutra, don't read a PDF that you downloaded online. Go ahead and, I don't know, wash dishes or mow lawns or whatever you need to do in order to buy the book. It's a totally different experience from the book. All right, 235. Where do you want to start?
The para. There are as many such sea of fragrant waters
Okay,
as atoms
good.
in
So we're in the flower bank world.
unspeakably-
The flower bank world, Avatamsaka Sutra,
Yes.
the core text of Zen, Hawaiian Buddhism, and basically all Buddhism that followed, translated, written in the 2nd century at the latest, probably, and translated in the 7th, and now again in the 20th, late 20th. So here we go.
Yep. Okay. There are as many such seas of fragrant waters as atoms in unspeakably many Buddha fields. The sea of fragrant water closest to the perimeter
Okay, so let's just take that one
mountains
sentence.
is called.
Let's take that one sentence. There are as many such seas of fragrant waters as atoms in unspeakably many Buddha fields. Okay, now, if you were to contemplate that, there's as many seas of fragrant waters, they're pleasant, which is nice, as atoms in unspeakably many Buddha fields. So we're beyond infinite, we're into unspeakable numbers. Now, what do you imagine the number of atoms is? It's unspeakably
Billions.
unspeakable.
Yeah.
Far more than billions.
No, far more than that. That's,
A lot more than that. And yet in every one of these atoms, there's an ocean of fragrant water. Now, you don't have to visualize an actual ocean, and you don't have to do this with every line. But what happens when you keep reading this and reading it and reading it is gradually your mind starts to open and say, well, wait a minute. Maybe this whole thing is bigger than I thought it was. Maybe this universe is bigger than I thought it was. Maybe if we go into the details of this universe, it's more complex or bigger than I thought it was. And it begins to give you perspective in that direction. Like your mind has to go out, right? Because that's a lot of oceans of fragrant waters, right? And elsewhere in the text, it'll bring you this way into the atoms and to the oceans within the atoms and so on and so forth, to the small and to the big. And so this way your mind at least grasps relativity. And so you get some chance of grokking, of understanding what the universe actually, I'm going to say the word might be like, or something closer to what the universe is than what we learn this pathetic little thing in school where, okay, well, here's the Earth, and here's the Sun, and then there's Mars and Jupiter, and then there's the Milky Way, and then but see, that's not what our universe is like at all. And so the reason I keep saying that this book is perfect for this epoch, for this 21st century, and for young people who are lost, is that it's going to help you think in a manner that's indicated by the fact that we have these AIs that are going to be much smarter in certain ways than we are. But there are areas where we could be infinitely smarter than they are because we have consciousness. So now keep going. Read the next sentence. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I feel like this book is trying to give me a taste of infinity. I have been
Beyond
using
infinity. An infinity of infinities.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Hilbert Hotels?
I remember it vaguely.
Okay,
and
look it up
Hilbert's faces.
look it up for the audience. Say, give me 2 paragraphs on Hilbert Hotels. Whoa, somebody must have fallen off a cliff.
Yeah.
I hope they're okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, keep going. Let's hear Hilbert Hotels.
Okay, it's Hilbert Hotel is a famous thought experiment
Slow
in
down, go slowly so
mathematics.
the audience can enjoy it.
Yep. Specifically in set theory, used to illustrate properties of infinite sets. It's named after the German mathematician David Hilbert. Here's an overview, basic concept. Imagine a hotel with infinitely many rooms, all
Imagine a hotel with
numbered
infinitely
1.
many rooms, right? Okay, good.
Yes, all numbered 1, 2, 3, dash, dash, dash.
Okay,
The hotel is fully occupied.
okay.
Key scenarios. One new guest arrives. Move guest in room 1 to room 2 and room 2 to room 3 and so on. Basically keep switching things.
Move the guest
Or
that was in room 1. You're going to move him to room 2 because a new guest has arrived.
yes,
Okay,
yes. The new guest can then occupy room 1. So displacing
okay,
one guest at a time and adding
okay.
it to the first room. Infinitely many new guests arrive. Move guest in room 1. Oh no, I think yeah. So now next part is new guests can occupy. Sorry, let me go back again.
Okay.
So earlier we discussed when one new guest arrives, what happens.
They
Now
move that
suppose
one. They move the.
infinitely many.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So now infinitely many new guests arrive. Move guest in room 1 to room 2, room 2 to room 4, room 3 to room 6, and so on, doubling each room number. This time it's doubling. So moving room 1 to room 2, and the guest in room 2 to room 4, and the guest in room 3 to room 6.
Because infinite guests have arrived
Mm,
this time, not just one. Infinite. Okay, go ahead.
yes, yes. New guests can occupy all odd number rooms. Yeah, that
Okay.
makes sense. Infinitely many coaches, each with infinitely many guests, arrive.
Coaches.
Yeah, coaches.
All right.
Assign each existing guest and each coach a unique prime number.
All right.
New rooms numbers are calculated using powers of primes.
What's that like? 1, 3,
Okay.
7.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
numbers that can't be divided by one number equally or something. Define a prime number.
So prime number is a number which can't be broken into factors other than one and itself.
Okay, good.
For example,
Perfect.
3.
Good. All right.
So assign each guest and each coach a unique prime number. Okay. New room numbers are calculated using powers of primes.
So how many rooms are there
And
now? Now we're getting into too much math, but how many rooms are there now?
infinitely many rooms.
Infinite. We started with infinitely many rooms.
Yeah.
So this is
Now
infinitely to
more
the.
than infinite, I would say.
Okay, so it's a power of infinite, and that's all that this book is
Yeah.
right, helping you to understand. Okay, I'll cut to the chase. Basically, there's not just one infinity. There's an infinity of infinities. There's an infinity of those infinities, and so your brain can't really grok this unless you let the sutra, or you're a very gifted mathematician, start to understand what that means for us here on this planet, this beautiful planet Earth. Now, let's go back to the sutra and read the next sentence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't let anybody ever tell you infinity again without your brain going, well, wait a minute, which infinity? Or what infinity? Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay. The sea of fragrant water closest to the perimeter mountains is called crystal ground. With a world system called always radiating light, composed of the sounds of the pure eons of the ocean of worlds. At the bottom of this world system is a world called banner of pleasing pure light, surrounded by as many worlds as atoms in a Buddha field, uniformly pure. The Buddha there is called energetic wisdom with supreme concentration. Above this, past as many worlds as atoms in 10 Buddha fields, level with the world diamond banner. The world on the 10th level of the world system of the sea of fragrant water in the center is a world called banner of arrays of fragrances, surrounded by as many worlds as atoms in 10 Buddha fields, uniformly pure. The Buddha there is called unobstructed lamp of the cosmos.
Good.
Above this,
Okay, keep going if you want. Go ahead.
Above this, past as many worlds as atoms in 3 Buddha fields, parallel to the world endurance.
Hey, that's our
is a
world.
world
Endurance
called
is our world. Endurance
Yeah.
is our world. Okay, keep going.
It's a world called radiant treasury of light. Its Buddha is unimpeded light of wisdom pervading the cosmos. Above this, past as many worlds as atoms in 7 Buddha fields, at the top of this world system is a world called Supreme Body Fragrance, surrounded by as many worlds as atoms in 20 Buddha fields, uniformly pure. The Buddha there is called flowers of the branches of enlightenment.
Okay, so you won't get this at first, but it will get you. And you see, you notice how they put the world endurance or Earth, or this world that we're living in now, 24th century, in the middle of this cosmos of Hilbert rooms. But these are worlds of world systems, universes, right? Can you see how that's closer, a closer approximation to reality than what you were taught in school?
I had this one question regarding this.
Okay.
Like, how can you, like, in this paragraph, they were talking a lot about lying a world above some other world or lying in parallel to
Yeah.
current world of endurance. So, how would directions make sense
How
when
would
we are
what?
comparing worlds? How would directions, these are directions, right? Above
Okay,
something.
good question. Good
or-
question. Okay, so the convention in the text is to speak of worlds in the 10 directions. What are the 10 directions? Let the audience know what the 10 directions are.
Yeah, it's north, south, east, west, then northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest, and up and down.
Okay,
So
so
total of
when you
10.
visualize that, what do you get? You get a three-dimensional space.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so for the human mind, it's too much to ask for the human to transcend three-dimensional space. So it embeds it in three-dimensional space. And so this world is either beneath an infinite number of world systems, or it's above an infinite number of world systems, or it's to the left of the 10 directions, but it's in some geographic relation. Now later, all of that it's important to expand the mind first, and then when you bring it back down, there's a whole other thing that goes on, but it's premature to talk about that right now.
Okay.
If I was going to teach you scuba diving, the first thing I have to do is teach you to trust that you can breathe from a tank, to suspend your belief that you're going to suffocate or something else, that you're going to, if you go underwater, you're going to drown. So you'd have to get rid of that first, okay? You'd have to get rid of that delusional belief that you can't breathe air from a tank. Once that was clear, then we could go into the water, and then there's all kinds of other things I could show you. But I can't show you those yet because we're still on land and you're still learning to breathe with the tank. Do you see what I'm saying? And so it is with
Yeah.
any mastering any art or skill, right? But as we
Yeah,
began,
it's
discipline, insight, energy, uh, concentration or meditation, generosity, and patience, that's what you need to do this. Now, with regard to your thoughts, if you don't generate them, who does? I'm going back to the beginning now because I want to deal with your fear, your painful thoughts, and your fears.
no, it's not painful as such. It's like it comes and bothers. Especially, it's like I have a lot of work these days, but most of the energy is spent on the negative thoughts that says,
No, no, no. It's not that
uh,
it's the intention is put on the negative thoughts.
yeah,
Thoughts are like
yeah.
clouds. Thoughts are like clouds. Sometimes there's a group of clouds that hangs around for a while, but most of them just go right by. They're more like birds, right? And so as long as you don't hang on to them, they're just going to come and they're going to go. And when you
But
stop giving them
here's the
attention, it's
one.
like a little kid. If you give it too much attention, let's say the kid is banging a pan on the floor to get attention. If you don't pay attention to it, sooner or later the kid gives up and goes out and plays outside or something. But if you put all your attention on the kid, he's going to keep banging that pan because he figured, oh, this will get my attention. Same thing with thoughts in a manner of speaking, or at least phenomenologically, they're similar. If you have a negative thought and you give it a lot of attention, it just brings more negative thought because
So the
it worked
question
to
is,
capture
who
your attention.
is,
Go ahead.
yeah, so but who is the one that is deciding to give attention to negative thoughts?
Good point. You don't need someone to decide that. It attracts attention automatically because we are in an animal body, and an animal, regardless of its species, does not want to die. That's true. So, I mean, a tiger or a dog or an owl or a fly may not think about death, but it certainly doesn't want to die. It's programmed that way. Now, your body is programmed that way too. You also think about food, right? So that there are some features of the animal that you can't escape while you're doing your little visit here on Earth, while you're doing your Earth journey.
So from the looks of it, why did this reality add this feature at all where it says I need to be afraid of death at the same time there is nothing to
You
be
don't need to
afraid
be
of death?
afraid of death. You want to avoid getting killed, right?
But why?
Like any animal. But the obsession over it, that's uniquely human.
But there is this tendency to avoid death as well. Why? Why should why is this reality saying to avoid death?
Why does this earth exist with animals and humans on it?
Through avoidance of death of billions of years,
Huh?
and it's just a runs? No,
Why does this world exist at all? Is the question.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, when you get to the answer to that, then you could get to the question of, well, why were we put in animal bodies?
Okay, but regarding the thought,
All
I
right.
feel like the whole universe constructs it. Like whatever happened a second ago or just a moment ago
Okay.
results into the next moment.
That's a very, very nice formulation. That anything that happens because of the net of Indra, right? Anything that
Yeah.
happens in the universe must involve the rest of the universe by necessity, even by physicalist standards, by quantum mechanics, by whatever
Yes.
standards you want, because of the interdependent origination. There's nothing that can occur in one part of the universe that doesn't affect the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, yeah.
So where does your self fit in that?
It doesn't in a way.
There you go. There you go. So now we need to use reason and dharma and insight and understanding and a little bit of reading, and a little bit of contemplation and asking the AIs. This is not for the undisciplined or lazy person who doesn't care whether they suffer or not. Okay, this is worthy of a man or a woman, worthy of their attention, worthy of their mind, worthy of their life, frankly. So it's not as simple as just saying, well, I just want you to magically wave a wand and make me enlightened or make me see the reality in perspective. That's not how this works. And so perhaps that's a hint to why we're here. And then the meaning of life, the understanding of life, and the purpose on earth, and also how to abide in this earth without being driven mad by our fellow monkeys. All of those things become clear too. So, but just keep asking questions and don't be shy. Truth is truth. It doesn't matter whether you get it from the Catholics or from the Buddhists or from the however, you got to throw away some parts of it because they aren't true or they're just arbitrary things that were put on there for social reasons. And use what you can use, right? But this work really does reward the resourceful, the woman, the man who says, I'm going to take this on my own. I'm going to have initiative on my own to try and understand. You can't be passive in this work because the power of the collective society is so great. It will weigh you down and you'll be in the same hell as everybody else. The life of quiet desperation that characterizes so many women and men. All right, questions before we stop?
Yeah, so with respect to that, you said, right, this is a work of, you said, so how can you do that without fear and hope?
Don't worry about fear and hope in the beginning. I mean, you can get rid of the fear, or whatever. You work in spite of fear and hope. Later, you won't need either one. Okay? But right now, don't worry about that now. That's kind of advanced. There's every reason for you to be hopeful. There's every reason for you to be hopeful and optimistic. But later, you won't need those things because you're just passing through on this earth. Your consciousness having human experience. You're not human having spiritual experience. You got it backwards. And therein lies the fun,
Yeah.
But you'll realize that you got to keep going. And the more initiative you apply, the more of your own initiative. This goes for everyone, anybody listening too. The more of your own initiative there is, that's what God smiles on. That's the way it is. So keep that in mind. No one's going to hand this to you on a silver platter. And if they do, they're probably going to follow it up with a collection plate.
Yeah, no, I still think, how can you have initiative without any desire for achieving something?
Who said you should not have desire for achieving something?
Because desire is hope and fear, right? Or I think.
Okay, you're like jumping. You got the physics book, and you read the introduction, and you read the first half of the first chapter, and then you went to the end, where it says, this is probability, this is probably correct, or whatever. And you skipped the whole book and just read some of the conclusions, and then say, oh well, all this is probability anyway. In other words, you've cheated yourself. Desire for truth is what runs this machine. Don't get confused because at some later time, neither desire nor hope are indicated anymore. I mean, good God, you're God. When you're universal consciousness, you don't have desire and you have no fear. And what are you going to want? But you're not there yet, so don't get confused. All right? Good question.
Okay.
All right? Anything else before we stop, sir?
No.
Hasta luego. Vaya con Dios. Guard your mind. And good luck. Keep going. Ciao.